This part of the tutorial will cover how to add a threat assessment. Begin by going to the Add Assessments tab and select the type of assessment that we'll be adding, in this case, threat. Next, add a name for the assessment. As we'll be looking at bushmeat hunting within the Cabo Forest Concession, we'll name it Cabo Forest Concession. And then click Start Assessment. Next, we'll zoom to the area that we believe to be under threat. In this case, around the Congo rainforest near the town of Osu. So there's the town. Unfortunately, we can't see where the forest is, so we go to Map Options and change to the Aerial View Map. And now we can see where the forest lies. Next, we need to add the location that we believe is impacted by bushmeat hunting. So we'll draw a polygon. Around the impacted area. To seal the polygon, just double-click where we started. Next, we need to complete the threat assessment form. So we've already given the assessment a name and added the spatial data, shown here. Next, we'll choose a threat type. As it's bushmeat hunting, we'll scroll down to hunting and collecting terrestrial animals. As for timing, we believe it's an ongoing threat. The scope is unknown, the severity is unknown, and the stress applies to species as opposed to ecosystems. So we'll select species stresses. We can then add a description of the threat assessment using free text in the description box. This description can be anything that you think is useful. At this point, we can either publish the assessment, which would show only where the threat was, or we can look up species that have been impacted. So far in the threat assessment, we have added the spatial location of the threat and completed the assessment form. Now we're going to look at which species are impacted. We can look at any family or group of animals that we think may be impacted. In this case, we'll look for birds that are impacted. And then we click Find All Species that occur within the polygon we've selected. As you can see, we've been returned 13 different birds, and we can select whether we believe they're impacted. For example, this species may be known to be impacted, as is this one and this one. And then we can publish our assessment, double checking that we're happy with the form and the impacted species. Now that we have published our Cabo Forest Concession threat, we can search for it within the database. We can find it either by threat type, for example, we can type hunt. And we are presented with the threat category for hunting and collecting terrestrial animals. And then we click search. And this brings up the Cabo Forest Concession. We can zoom to it, and you'll see that it's the same polygon that we input in the last part of the tutorial. Alternatively, we can search for threat by name. For example, if we put in Cabo, Again, our threat assessment appears as an option and we can search for it. In addition to searching by threat type or name, we can search within areas. For example, we might want to find threats within the Congo. And we'll need to use the geopolitical area as opposed to species. And we'll need to search for threats because we don't want species or interventions to be returned. And again, our threat assessment will be returned. We can then view the assessment by going to the clog and clicking View Assessment. The description that we put in the free text is shown, as is the information that we put in the form. And we can also look at the species impacted. And we can see the ranges of these species by clicking the I button. Once you've found the threat assessment you're interested in, you can always edit the assessment by going to Edit. And this would allow you to modify the geometry. For example, if you believe that the threat has grown in area impacted, you can change the threat from ongoing to past and likely to return, or one of the other categories. You can also change the text, and you can republish or go and add more species that have been impacted. For example, we might go back and look at birds again. And for example, this species may no longer be impacted, but these two species have now become impacted. And then you would click Publish again to change the assessment. When you look at species, you can change the colour of the range maps that are displayed and also change the transparency of the range maps using the colour and transparency options here. Once you have your threat assessment, you can also petition an assessment, which means you can share it with collaborators and get other experts to look at it. You can add the assessment to a search by clicking the Add to Search. This means that you can find other species that occur, or other threats or interventions that occur within this area. For example, we might look at and if you're looking for species, you need to make sure that the filter has them ticked on.